Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Be sure to check out Dragon Shield for all of the best accessories to protect your decks. TCG Player for cards at great prices while supporting local game stores. And Patreon, where you get awesome benefits for your direct support. Hello everyone, and welcome to our newest gameplay series. We will be showcasing legacy games in a best of 3 fashion. We are still very new to showcasing 1v1 content, so we would love to hear any and all feedback you have. Without further ado, let's kick off tonight's first match. First, we have Ryan piloting Goblins. A deck almost as old as the format itself, this mid-range deck seeks to use strong Goblin synergies to generate card advantage by overwhelming opponents with Goblins. Ryan's opening hand contains a Goblin Lackey, Muxus Goblin Grandee, Sling Gang Lieutenant, Aether Vial, Wasteland, Mountain, and his London Mulligan is a Goblin Crater Maker. After that, we have Zach piloting Mono Red Burn. This is seen as one of the easiest decks to break into the Legacy format due to its low cost. This deck seeks to do 20 damage to an opponent as fast as possible through the use of cheap efficient creatures and direct damage spells. Zach's opening hand contains an Eidolon of the Great Revel, 2 Price of Progress, 2 Monastery Swiftspear, and 2 Mountains. Without further ado, let's kick off this silly slew of spell-slinging sleuths. Ryan wins the T-Pose challenge and gets to start us off. Ryan plays a Mountain for turn. He casts a Goblin Lackey. He passes. Zach draws and also plays a Mountain for turn. He casts a Monastery Swiftspear. Zach doesn't attack, so he can effectively block Ryan's Goblin Lackey. Ryan grumbles a bit, and Zach passes the turn. Ryan draws and plays a Wasteland. He casts an Aether Vial. Ryan ends the turn. Zach draws and plays a Mountain. He casts Eidolon of the Great Revel. He attacks Ryan with his Swiftspear. Ryan takes it, and Zach ends his turn. During his upkeep, Ryan puts a charge counter onto Aether Vial. He draws and plays a Rishadan Port. Ryan passes. During Zach's upkeep, Ryan activates Rishadan Port, tapping down one of Zach's Mountains. Zach draws and suspends a Rift Bolt. He attacks Ryan with Eidolon. Ryan takes it, and Zach gives the turn to Ryan. At the end of Zach's turn, Ryan activates Aether Vial, putting a Goblin Lackey onto the battlefield. During his upkeep, Ryan puts a counter onto Aether Vial. He draws and moves to combat. He attacks Zach with both of his lackeys. Zach blocks one of them with Swiftspear. Zach takes the other hit, and Goblin Lackey triggers. Ryan puts Muxus Goblin Grandee onto the battlefield. Muxus triggers, and Ryan reveals the top 6 cards of his library. He reveals a Munitions Expert, Goblin Lackey, Goblin Crater Maker, Goblin Matron, Aether Vial, and a Wasteland. Then all goblins enter the battlefield. Munitions Expert triggers, and Ryan kills Eidolon of the Great Revel. Then Goblin Matron triggers, and Ryan fetches up another Muxus into his hand. With Zach now staring down a massive army, Ryan ends his turn. During his upkeep, Zach's Rift Bolt triggers from exile. In response, Ryan ports one of Zach's Mountains. Then Zach removes a counter and casts Rift Bolt, targeting Ryan's Goblin Lackey. Monastery Swiftspear triggers and gets +1/+1. Zach draws and plays a Mountain. He casts another Eidolon of the Great Revel. Holding up blockers, Zach passes. During his upkeep, Ryan puts a counter onto Aether Vial. He draws and activates Aether Vial, putting Goblin Warchief onto the battlefield. He moves to combat and attacks Zach with everything. Muxus triggers and gets +6/+6. Zach blocks Crater Maker with Eidolon and Lackey with Swiftspear. Lackey dies, Eidolon and Crater Maker trade, and Zach takes the rest. Ryan passes the turn. During Zach's upkeep, Ryan attempts to port one of Zach's Mountains. In response, Zach taps his Mountain to cast Price of Progress. Monastery Swiftspear triggers and gets +1/+1. Ryan takes 4, and Zach draws for turn. He casts Monastery Swiftspear. Zach passes. During his upkeep, Ryan puts a charge counter onto Aether Vial. He draws and plays a Scalding Tarn for turn. He moves to combat and attacks with everything. Muxus triggers, and in response, Zach sacrifices 2 Mountains to cast Fire Blast, targeting Muxus. In response, Ryan activates Aether Vial, putting Sling Gang Lieutenant onto the battlefield. Sling Gang enters, and Ryan creates 2 goblins. With Fire Blast still on the stack, Ryan sacrifices goblins to Sling Gang, draining out Zach and winning the game. Before game 2, Ryan moves the sideboard, taking out 3 Goblin Lackeys because Zach always has more efficient blockers. He substitutes 3 Pyrokinesis to clear a path for his attackers. Zach moves the sideboard as well. He takes out 3 Roiling Vortex because it has no useful effect on Ryan's deck. He also takes out a Barbarian Ring. He puts in 4 Shattering Spree to help deal with Ryan's Aether Vial. In Game 2, Zach's opening hand contains an Exquisite Firecraft, Eidolon of the Great Revel, Monastery Swiftspear, Goblin Guide, 2 mountains, and his London Mulligan is a price of progress. Ryan had really bad draws, and his opening hand contains a Boggart Harbinger, Goblin Matron, 2 Badlands, and his 3 London Mulligans are Goblin Matron, Muxus Goblin Grandee, and a Bloodstained Mire. And Zach gets to start us off. Zach plays a mountain for turn. He casts a Goblin Guide. He attacks Ryan with the Goblin. Ryan reveals the top card of his library, which is a Cavern of Souls, and puts it into his hand. Then Ryan takes the hit, and Zach passes the turn. Ryan draws and plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Goblin. He passes. Zach draws and plays a mountain. He attacks Ryan with Goblin Guide. Ryan reveals Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker off of the top of his library. Ryan takes it, and in his second main phase, Zach casts an Eidolon of the Great Revel. Zach ends his turn. Ryan draws and plays a Badlands. He passes. Zach draws and plays a mountain. He casts a Monastery Swiftspear. Eidolon triggers, and Zach takes 2. He attacks Ryan with everything. Goblin Guide triggers, and Ryan reveals a Goblin Crater Maker. Ryan takes it, and Zach ships the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Badlands. He casts a Goblin Crater Maker. Eidolon triggers, and Ryan takes 2. Ryan passes. Zach draws and casts Exquisite Firecraft, targeting Ryan. Eidolon triggers, and Zach takes 2. Swiftspear triggers and gets +1/+1. Then Ryan takes 4, and Zach moves to combat. He attacks Ryan with everything. Goblin Guide triggers, and Ryan reveals an Ether Vial. Ryan blocks Goblin Guide with Goblin Crater Maker. Before damage, Ryan activates Crater Maker, sacrificing it to deal 2 damage to Eidolon, killing it. Then Ryan takes the rest. In his second main phase, Zach plays a mountain. Zach gives the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and casts Goblin Matron. It enters, and Ryan fetches up a Munitions Expert into his hand. Ryan passes. Zach draws and rips the perfect card off of the top. He casts Lightning Bolt, dealing 3 damage to Ryan and winning the game. No one has any sideboard changes, and then they move to Game 3. In this game, Zach's opening hand contains a Fire Blast, 2 Shattering Spree, Lava Spike, Chain Lightning, Monastery Swiftspear, and a Mountain. In this game, Ryan's opening hand contains Bloodstained Mire, Goblin Lackey, 2 Aether Vial, 2 Munitions Expert, and a Goblin Ringleader. And Ryan gets to start us off. Ryan plays a Bloodstained Mire for turn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He casts an Aether Vial. Ryan passes. Zach draws and plays a mountain. He casts Shattering Spree, destroying Aether Vial. Zach passes. Ryan draws and plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Goblin. He casts another Aether Vial. He casts a Goblin Lackey. Ryan passes. Zach draws and plays a mountain. He casts Monastery Swiftspear. Ryan jokes that he had 2 Aether Vials, and there is no way Zach has 2 Shattering Sprees. Zach casts Shattering Spree, destroying Ryan's Aether Vial again. Swiftspear's powers triggers and gets +1/+1, but Zach holds back against Lackey and passes back to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Badlands. He casts Munitions Expert. It enters and kills Swiftspear. He moves to combat and attacks Zach with Goblin Lackey. Zach takes it, and Lackey triggers. Ryan puts a Goblin Ringleader onto the battlefield. Ringleader triggers, and Ryan reveals the top 4. He reveals a Sling Gang Lieutenant, Muxus Goblin Grandee, and 2 Goblin Crater Makers. Zach curses Ryan's luck, and Ryan puts the cards into his hand. With nothing else, Ryan passes the turn. Zach draws and casts Chain Lightning, targeting Lackey. Lackey dies, and Zach follows up with a Lava Spike, targeting Ryan. Ryan takes it, and Zach ends his turn. Ryan draws and moves to combat. He attacks Zach with everything. Zach takes it, and Ryan passes. Zach draws and casts an Eidolon of the Great Revel. Zach passes. At the end of Zach's turn, Ryan flashes in a Munitions Expert. Eidolon triggers, and Ryan takes 2. Munitions Expert enters and kills Eidolon. The turn then moves to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Rashadan Port. He casts another Goblin Ringleader. It resolves, and Ryan reveals the top 4 of his library. He reveals a Boggart Harbinger, a Mountain, a Wasteland, and a Pashalik Mons. He puts the goblins into his hand and the rest on bottom. He attacks Zach with everything. Zach takes it, and Ryan passes. Zach draws and casts Chain Lightning, dealing 3 to Ryan. Zach passes. Ryan draws and plays a mountain. He casts Sling Gang Lieutenant. It resolves, and with the trigger on the stack, Zach casts Lightning Bolt, targeting Sling Gang. In response, Ryan sacks Sling Gang to itself, draining Zach for 1, and Ryan gains 1 life. Then Ryan creates 2 goblins. Ryan moves to combat and attacks Zach with everything. Zach takes it, and Ryan passes the turn. Zach draws, sees he has no outs, and concedes the game to Ryan. Ladies and gentlemen, what a match. Congrats to Ryan on his win. In Game 1, Ryan was able to outrace Zach with his value engines and efficient threats. Muxus landing and hitting so many goblins put Ryan at a huge advantage. In Game 2, Ryan's hands were very bad and had to mulligan down to 4. Zach still played expertly, keeping his game plan solid. He dealt with threats and closed out the game quickly. In Game 3, Ryan kept blockers off the board to keep pushing forward. His goblin ringleaders kept cards in his hand to keep putting more goblins into play when they were inevitably killed off by Zach's damage spells. Well, that about wraps it up for this Legacy match. What did you think? Did you enjoy it? Was there something we could do better? Is there something else you'd like to see? We would love to hear any and all feedback you have in the comments below. Your feedback will help us improve this series over time. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.